So I feel like, man, whatever you do wrong must come back around in a circle. Just like you know what I'm talking about. If you did wrong and everybody know it's blatant, the truth is out in the open. You sent that type of energy towards the Young Dolph way, and you got no Young Dolph knocked off.
For years, CMG looked untouchable. Yo Gotti sat at the top like a kingpin, with a stacked roster of artists making headlines, breaking charts, and flooding the streets with heat. Blac Youngsta was the wild card, loud, unpredictable, and loyal to the core. Moneybagg Yo had the hits, 42 Dugg was rising fast, and Glorilla? She exploded like a firework the moment she touched a mic. From the outside, it looked like one big family. Locked in, unbreakable. But that image? It shattered. And now, the whispers have turned into warnings. Stan G, a respected voice from deep inside Memphis, just said what fans and insiders have quietly suspected for years. Yo Gotti might be plotting against his own artist. And that artist is none other than Blac Youngsta. This isn't coming from a blog. It's not just another rap rumor. It's a chilling sign that CMG, one of the most feared and respected camps in hip-hop, could be falling apart from the inside. The loyalty? Cracked. The unity? Gone quiet. And what's left? A ticking time bomb, and everyone's wondering who's about to get caught in the blast. But that's just the beginning. There was a time when CMG felt like a movement. Not just a label, a brotherhood. You'd see them shoulder to shoulder at shows, in music videos, or flexing together online like one solid front. Blac Youngsta, Moneybagg Yo, 42 Dugg, and Glorilla, they moved like family. And Yo Gotti? He was the boss, the mentor, the glue holding it all together. Youngsta was the wild one, always pulling off something viral or outrageous. He had the energy, the street appeal, the raw chaos that made CMG feel alive. Whenever the label needed attention, he brought it, no hesitation. But somewhere along the way, that energy shifted. Moneybagg Yo's momentum started fading. 42 Dugg got caught up in legal problems. Glorilla became the golden ticket, Gotti's new obsession. And Blac Youngsta? He began to fade from the picture, piece by piece. Then came the real red flag. He removed CMG from his bio. No announcement, no explanation, just gone. And that silence spoke louder than any diss track. Right after that, the cryptic caption started. Subtle jabs, veiled shots, talking about fake CEOs and fake loyalty. For fans watching closely, it wasn't hard to connect the dots. Something serious was unraveling behind the scenes. It didn't feel like a family anymore. It felt like someone trying to survive. And that's when Stan G stepped in with a warning that made it clear. This wasn't just rap drama, it was war on the inside. When Stan G speaks, Memphis listens. He's not some clout chaser or outsider looking in. Stan G is plugged into the streets deep. He's been around long enough to know who's really calling shots, who's just fronting, and more importantly, who's in danger. So when he sat down with no jumper and said Yo Gotti might be plotting against Blac Youngsta, jaws dropped. He didn't sugarcoat a thing. He looked straight into the camera and said that the same energy Yo Gotti allegedly used to target Young Dolph, energy that led to Dolph's tragic murder, might now be turning inward. And if Gotti could go that far with a rival, Stan asked, what makes anyone think he wouldn't turn on one of his own? That wasn't speculation. It was a straight-up warning. He said Youngsta's loyalty? It doesn't protect him anymore. In Gotti's world, once you become a problem, you get handled. And this wasn't just talk. Stan G claims to have spoken directly with people tied to the Dolph case. People who've seen this kind of thing play out before. People who know exactly how fast loyalty can be traded for silence. Then he hit fans with the harshest truth of all. Youngsta wasn't just Gotti's artist. He was Gotti's send-off. The one he pushed out front to cause chaos, keep the spotlight, and take the risks, while Gotti stayed in the background, clean and calculated. That kind of role? It works until it doesn't. And right now, it's not working. Stan G said it loud and clear, a Youngsta's not an asset anymore. He's a liability. A loud, unpredictable one. And in CMG's world, that's a position nobody wants to be in. Blac Youngsta was never the polished one. And that's exactly why he worked. He wasn't trying to be industry. He wasn't trying to be mainstream. He was loud, brash, unpredictable, and CMG used that to their full advantage. While Gotti played the boss in the background, calm and composed, Youngsta was the chaos engine. He dropped diss tracks that felt like war cries. He filmed music videos in enemy neighborhoods. He stood at graveyards throwing subliminal shots, and fans either loved him or feared for him. Every time CMG needed attention, Youngsta delivered. But that kind of energy doesn't come without consequences. Especially after Young Dolph's murder, everything changed. Those antics? They stopped looking bold. They started looking dangerous. And suddenly, what used to keep CMG buzzing became a target on Youngsta's back. The same graveyard stunts that once went viral were now being pulled up in courtrooms and street rumors. People didn't just see a rapper. They saw a potential link to a case that still had the city on edge. And Gotti? He's too smart for that kind of heat. That's when the shift became obvious. Youngsta's wild loyalty wasn't viewed as loyalty anymore. It looked like recklessness, liability, baggage. Stan G called it out with brutal honesty. He said Gotti was never truly protecting Youngsta. He was using him, sending him out to handle the beefs, do the dirt, stir the pot, and soak up the attention, while Gotti stayed above it all. That's not partnership. That's positioning. And when someone in that role stops being useful, they're not just ignored. They're cut off. Worse, they become dangerous. And that's exactly where Youngsta finds himself now, not as CMG's wild card, but as a ticking time bomb, one that everyone's trying to get far away from before it blows. You can't talk about CMG's chaos without talking about Young Dolph. It's the moment everything started to unravel. Years ago, Yo Gotti tried to sign Dolph, but Dolph turned him down publicly, coldly. And from that point on, it wasn't business. It was personal. What followed wasn't just rap beef. It was all-out warfare. Gotti didn't let it go. He threw roadblocks at Dolph's career every chance he got behind the scenes, in the media, in the streets. But instead of slowing Dolph down, it only made him rise higher. Every diss track, every defiant move, every bar Dolph spit felt like a shot fired back at the Empire trying to shut him down. And standing right in the middle of it all, Blac Youngsta. He wasn't just on the sidelines. He was on the front lines. Youngsta pulled up in Dolph's neighborhoods. He filmed wild videos on locations meant to provoke. He dropped tracks that blurred the line between performance and provocation. To CMG, it looked like loyalty. To the streets, it looked like trouble waiting to explode. Then tragedy struck. Dolph was murdered in his own city, Memphis, and the hip-hop world froze. No charges were ever brought against Yo Gotti or Blac Youngsta. Nothing proven. No fingerprints. But the whispers? They roared. Fans, blogs, even street insiders were already pointing fingers at CMG. And whether fair or not, that dark cloud settled over Gotti's camp, and it never left. Suddenly, everything Blac Youngsta had done before started to look different. Those graveyard videos? Those taunting lyrics? Those reckless appearances? They weren't just edgy anymore. They looked incriminating. Even if he didn't pull a trigger, Youngsta became the face of a beef that ended in blood. And in the years since, that association hasn't faded. It's gotten heavier, more uncomfortable, more dangerous. Stan G made it clear, Youngsta isn't an asset anymore. He's a walking reminder of CMG's darkest chapter. And in a world where image is everything and silence can be a death sentence, being tied to that kind of memory makes you a threat. To the brand, to the boss, to everything. At its peak, CMG was more than a label, it was a machine. Yo Gotti at the top, calm and calculated. Moneybagg Yo pumping out hits. Blac Youngsta keeping the streets entertained. 42 Dugg on a fast rise. Glorilla lighting up every stage she touched. It was balanced, strategic, dangerous in all the right ways. But that image? It's falling apart. Moneybagg Yo's buzz has cooled off. 42 Dugg is caught up in legal troubles. And Yo Gotti? He's poured every last drop of his energy and money into Glorilla, who's now shouldering the weight of CMG's survival almost on her own. Meanwhile, Blac Youngsta has gone quiet. Not silent in the planning his next move kind of way. Silent in the something's off kind of way. It started with a subtle move. He quietly removed CMG from his bio. Fans noticed immediately, and the internet lit up with questions. Then came the captions. The cryptic ones. The ones that didn't name names but screamed betrayal. He wrote about fake CEOs, fake loyalty, and fake brothers. Phrases that hit a little too close to home. Especially when you remember that Yo Gotti's been called all three by fans for years. And what made it feel even more real? These weren't cocky, flashy posts. They were emotional, raw, almost like confessions. Youngsta talked about being left behind, about losing people, about realizing that no matter how rich you are, you're never untouchable. And when someone like Youngsta, who built his brand on bravado and chaos, starts talking like that, it doesn't feel like branding anymore. It feels like fear. The fans caught it. Stan G caught it. Everyone watching CMG saw the shift from unity to survival, from family to fracture. And it's not just a falling out. It's a full-on breakdown. Because when loyalty dies inside a machine built on power, ego, and secrets, everything starts to shake. Yo Gotti doesn't just run a label, he runs it like a syndicate. From day one, he's modeled himself after the mob. His name? Inspired by John Gotti. His attitude? Quiet power, controlled aggression, and moves made in the shadows. Fans didn't just see a rapper, they saw a boss. Suits, cigars, coded messages and lyrics. Everything about his image screamed, I don't need to say it twice. But here's the thing about mob structures. Loyalty isn't optional. It's everything. And when that loyalty breaks, the response is never gentle. So when Blac Youngsta started throwing subliminal shots, calling out fake CEOs, distancing himself from CMG, posting like a man who's been burned, it didn't take long for Gotti to fire back. Not with tweets, not with direct confrontation, with bars. He slid into Jay-Z's Dynasty intro, instrumental, and dropped coded lines that sounded less like music and more like warning shots. It was subtle, sharp, the kind of response you'd expect from someone who doesn't need to yell to make a threat clear. And in Gotti's world, that's all it takes. This is where things stop feeling like label drama and start feeling like something out of a crime saga. Because in a structure modeled after the mob, betrayal isn't just a problem, it's a death sentence. Not literally, necessarily, but career-wise, socially, legally. If Gotti sees Youngsta as a liability instead of a soldier, there's no coming back. Stan G even said it plainly, Gotti's empire moves like a machine. When a piece stops working, it gets replaced. And that cold efficiency? That's what makes this so dangerous. Because if Youngsta crossed a line, and that line wasn't just personal but organizational, the response won't be emotional. It'll be strategic. Final. That's how loyalty works in Gotti's world. Not as a feeling, but as a rule. Break it, and you're out. At first glance, it's easy to call Blac Youngsta reckless. The diss tracks, the graveyard videos, the taunts aimed at rivals, sometimes even right after tragic events. To the public, it looked like he was wilding out on his own. No filter, no breaks, just chaos. But what if that wasn't the whole story? What if Youngsta wasn't reckless? What if he was used? Stan G didn't hold back on this point. He said it outright. Blac Youngsta was a send-off. Someone Yo Gotti pushed out front to take the heat, handle the mess, and stir up headlines while Gotti stayed clean behind the scenes. Think about it. Gotti rarely engaged in public beef. He never stood at a gravesite filming diss content. He wasn't the one pulling up in enemy neighborhoods or flashing stacks in sketchy areas. But Youngsta? He did all of it. On camera. And every time he did, CMG stayed relevant. Youngsta kept the spotlight burning, kept the streets talking, and gave CMG the street cred that money can't buy. But that role has an expiration date. Because once the heat gets too real, once the streets are watching, the feds are listening, and the media starts digging, that kind of energy becomes toxic. Not to the artist, to the brand. And Gotti's brand? It's everything. So now, fans are asking the real question, was Youngsta ever truly protected? Or was he just a pawn put in play when needed and pushed off the board when the game got dangerous? Because when someone has done everything for a label, risked reputation, safety, even freedom, and suddenly finds themselves alone, throwing subliminals at the boss they once pledged loyalty to, That's not rebellion. That's betrayal with a backstory. And whether he realized it too late or always knew but hoped for more, Youngsta's recent silence, his emotional rants, and his sudden shift in tone say it all. He's not just frustrated. He feels set up. Let's stop pretending this is just rap drama. Because if you've been watching closely, you know this feels different. When Blac Youngsta fires shots online, it's not just about bars or egos. And when Stan G drops a public warning, he's not chasing clout. He's been around too long for that. This is the same man who sat down with people tied directly to the Young Dolph case. The same man who's seen what happens when beef spills into the streets. And right now, he's sounding the alarm again. Only this time, it's aimed at Youngsta. He's not just warning him to watch his back. He's practically saying it might already be too late. Because here's the harsh truth. If Yo Gotti truly sees Youngsta as a threat, a loose end, or a walking liability, the fallout won't be handled in a press release. It won't be a label drop or a quiet contract termination. It'll be silence. And not the kind you recover from. Gotti's not just another rapper. He moves like the president of Memphis. Money, lawyers, political ties, his network stretches far beyond the studio. If he wants someone blackballed, it's done. If he wants legal smoke, he can make that happen too. But this feels deeper than legal threats. Blac Youngsta isn't just beefing with his boss. He's sitting on too many secrets. He's seen everything the street moves, the business deals, the conversations that never make it to Instagram. That's what makes this dangerous. Because Youngsta isn't just a former soldier airing grievances. He's a liability with history. He's the loudest face tied to the darkest chapter in CMG's story, the Dolph beef, the diss videos, the heat that's never fully cooled down. And now, after years of writing for the label, he's on his own. Emotional, isolated, saying things like, "It doesn't matter how much money you have, you can still be touched." That doesn't sound like rap talk. That sounds like a man who's scared. And the more he talks, the more fans can't help but ask, is this really just a falling out between artist and label? Or is Youngsta standing on the edge of something way darker than music beef? Because if this goes left, it won't just be tracks and tweets. It'll be families, crews, and reputations caught in the crossfire. Once upon a time, CMG looked unstoppable. A label that turned street energy into chart-topping success. An empire built on loyalty, hustle, and fearlessness. And at the center of it all, Yo Gotti, the mastermind. The strategist. The one pulling every string behind the scenes. But now, the curtain's being pulled back. And what we're seeing behind it? Cracks, secrets, bloodlines turning to battle lines. Stan G's warning wasn't just about Blac Youngsta. It was a wake-up call for everyone watching. He said it clearly, Gotti's empire moves like a machine. And when a part of the machine becomes a threat, it gets replaced. The scary part? He didn't say if, he said when. Blac Youngsta may have once been the loudest soldier in Gotti's army. But today, he's alone, emotional, erratic, exposing the same people who once protected him, talking about fake loyalty, fake brothers, fake CEOs. And whether it's calculated rebellion or a desperate cry for help, one thing's certain. He's no longer inside the circle. He's standing on the outside, and the walls are closing in. CMG is no longer a brotherhood. It's a battleground. The buzz has faded. The unity is gone. The brand now rests on Glorilla's back, while everyone else either fell off, got locked up, or got quiet. And as the tension builds, fans aren't asking who's dropping next. They're asking who's falling off next. Or worse, who's getting taken out? Because this doesn't feel like label drama anymore. It feels like a countdown. And if Yo Gotti truly believes Youngsta is a threat, one who knows too much, says too much, and refuses to fall in line, then the next move might not come from a studio. It might come from somewhere a lot darker. So now it's your turn to weigh in. Magnifying glass tilted left, is Yo Gotti protecting his empire at all costs? Collision, or is Blac Youngsta finally standing up after years of being used and discarded? Drop your thoughts in the comments. This story? It's not over. In fact, it might just be getting started.